Here's one version of a page, and here's a second version of the same page. Which one do you like better? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Thomas Patilli. On this channel, I make a lot of videos about artist editions, comic artist process, preliminary work, and I thought we'd take a little bit of a break from that and talk a little bit about my own process and my own comic work. Some of you may remember back in February, I started a challenge called 28 Panels. The idea behind it was that there's 28 days in February, and the challenge was to create a panel of comics a day for each day of the month. And so I wound up creating 28 panels, and it averaged out to, I think, 9 pages of comics. It was kind of like a stream of consciousness story where I did a panel a day and kind of organized each panel onto a page. It was more of like an experiment to just kind of like get back into drawing comics traditionally. So after it was done, I kind of analyzed it and thought there's some things I like about it, but I wanted to kind of like revise it and put a lot of the things that I've learned from this channel, looking at the great artists that we look at, and kind of just redo it and try to level it up a little bit. Over the years, I've made a lot of comic pages, but most of them have been digital. I've done several graphic novels for different publishing companies, and because you're working under deadlines and oftentimes you're always behind schedule with the way publishing works, working digitally is really advantageous to the artist because it cuts time with scanning and revising and all that kind of stuff. But since I'm sort of more on my own time these days, working on more personal projects, I'm trying to push myself to make comics and illustrations traditionally again, because that's originally how I started to make comic art and illustration work. So this whole project here is really just me trying to get back into making comic pages traditionally again. There's sort of like a learning curve there because there's a lot of things you get used to when you're working digitally. And you kind of have to relearn how to approach composing a page and applying ink and pencil to a page to make comic work really sing in a traditional way. And as I go on with the revision process, I'm really liking the way these pages are starting to come out. My patrons over on Patreon have really been seeing the full process from start to finish on this particular comic. I'm showing a lot of behind the scenes, how I'm sort of taking those original drafts and revising them using tracing paper, some of the challenges that I'm running into, all that good stuff. So I don't want to show you every page, that's going to be for my patrons, but I want to give you a little bit of a look at how the original version of this is comparing to the most recent revised version. We'll go panel by panel, a couple of pages here and there. So if you want to look at that first page right here, this was the first original version when I was doing the 28 panel challenge. This was panel 1. I started with some text that I wrote down like the day before. And this was the first opening panel. I really liked the way this one came out, but I was still trying to figure out how I wanted to apply ink and the style of this comic. I sort of started to find the style as I went on with this particular 28 panel exercise. And then the revised version now is this. This is the more recent version. I feel like I fine-tuned it a little bit more. I got to understand the character and the character design a little bit better too. So I feel like the character is a little bit more fleshed out and kind of looks more consistent as the comic is going on. And this is side by side with those two panels sort of look like next to each other. It's still me, but it's two very different approaches, different ways of using shadow, different ways of even composing the panel. I kind of like changed some of the composition stuff here. The basic idea is the same. It's just I approached it a little bit differently on that second pass. And of course, I involved the title of the story into that first panel and wanted to kind of push myself a little bit more with my typography and lettering, which has always been a bit of a challenge for me. So here's an example of how I took pretty much the same exact framework of the full page, same panel organization on the page, same layout, and kind of just tweaked certain parts of it. This top tier right here, this is the original page, by the way. This top tier right here pretty much stayed very similar in the revised version. I'll show you the revised version now. It's pretty much the same. I just kind of like tighten the drawing up, I feel like the drawing and the inking is much more confident here. And if you look at them side by side, just this top tier right here, it's pretty similar, but again, I think there's some more subtleties and more like finessing of the line in this newer version that I'm just much more happy with. Kind of just a little bit of differences here in that third panel in terms of the incorporation of sound effects and all that stuff. The biggest change really happened on the bottom part, where I kind of changed the story around a little bit. Instead of her confronting these weird cavemen, Martian creatures that I just kind of developed on the spot, I kind of changed it around and turned them into robots. So it's the same idea. Her spaceship is appearing on this new planet, and instead of confronting these kind of creatures, she's confronting these freaky robots. The other thing about making this comic is that I wanted to work in a traditional size. I talk a lot about the size that artists work on this channel, and the traditional size for American comics, at least in more of the modern age, is 11 by 17. The size of the paper being 11 by 17, with more of like a 10 by 15 approximate drawing area on the page. I experimented with different paper stocks as well, all of it being Bristol board paper. And it wasn't until recently that I came across a paper that I'm really loving, actually. This new paper that I've been using is called Eon Artboard. It comes from Eon Products, and they happen to actually be the sponsor of this video. They create a really great 11 by 17 Bristol board paper, and the last 3 pages of this comic that I've been working on so far have been drawn on this paper, and it's been a noticeable difference for sure. They make different finishes. I've talked a lot about on this channel vellum versus smooth and what I prefer, and they make both the vellum finish and the smooth finish. The vellum finish is 130 pound and the smooth finish is 100 pound, and both are really, really nice. I prefer personally vellum finish when it comes to Bristol board paper and when it comes to drawing comics, but every now and then I do like a smooth finish as well. There's pros and cons to using both, but when the paper quality itself is really strong and really good, you could really utilize the benefits of working on good paper stock for your comics or illustration. Part of my process with this particular comic, I haven't really been like light boxing it from the original version. A lot of times I'm just kind of eyeing it and redrawing it, which means I'm doing a lot of erasing right onto the board. And these pages can really take a lot of drawing and erasing, which is great. And after I ink on it, I'll erase all of the pencil lines. And a lot of that ink seemed to have absorbed into the paper a lot stronger than some of the other papers that I've been through. So I'm super happy with this artboard. Eon Products also makes other products such as ink. I'm a real sort of like supplies junkie, as some of my videos may suggest. I like talking about what supplies I use and also learning about what supplies other artists use as well. And their inks are really awesome too. These are really thick, really well-drying inks that are perfect for comic making and illustration. They make a Velvet Squid Black India ink, which is awesome. And then there's a new ink that they are just releasing now. It's called their Eon Vortex Matte Black ink. I haven't gotten a chance to use this one yet, but after working with some of their other products, I definitely trust that this is probably an awesome ink. I'm looking forward to trying this ink out on this particular comic as well. These Eon products are making their way into the hands of a lot of comic artists and illustrators nowadays. That's sort of how I came across their brand and product and wanted to try them myself, and it's for good reason. This is really like professional grade stuff, and if you're looking to make comic art, especially traditionally, this is your stuff right here. These are really, really great art boards. And again, if you want to work in that traditional comic book size, 11 by 17, these are perfect for that. I have a feeling I'm going to burn through these 2 pads pretty quickly. Like I said, the last 3 pages of this comic have been done on these art boards. So I want to thank Eon Products for sponsoring this video. If you want to get your hands on any of these products that they make, I'll leave the link in the description of this video if you want to look further into their website and just order them for yourselves. Check out their social media as well. You'll get to see what other artists are using their products. And thanks again to Eon Products for sponsoring this video. So this is the latest page that I'm working on. This is page 7, actually. I think this comic is gonna come out to like 10 pages when all is said and done, but this is how it looks when it's pretty much penciled and all the lettering is done. I mentioned before that lettering is a big challenge for me when it comes to just illustration work and comic work in general. So a big part of this comic project for me working traditionally is trying to develop my lettering skills. They've never really been all that strong, but part of this whole exercise is for me to do everything on here traditionally. When all is said and done, I might tweak things digitally, the lettering, or re-letter it completely. But for now, I want to make sure that I complete the whole project and ink it traditionally, just to get better at it. I feel like as every page goes on, my lettering is making some noticeable progress. And in previous videos, we've talked about the process of making comics and the way traditional comics were made back in the day. A lot of times that's sort of like my focus in my videos. And so I kind of wanted to apply that to the process of this comic as well. And traditionally, the inking of the letters was done before you would ink the artwork on the page. So that's what I'm doing here. I sort of pencil the page when there's space left for the letters to go, and then I'll finesse the lettering a little bit, and before I go into the final inks, I'll ink the lettering. I use this handy Ames lettering guide. One of these days I'll make a video just about this. Maybe I need to learn a little bit more about this tool before I make that video, but I'm just experimenting with it right now. This is sort of like a classic tool for lettering comics. I think originally this is like made as a architectural tool. I'm sort of just skimming the surface as to what this thing can do, but I've been playing around with it and it's really been helping in terms of just like keeping the spacing between each line of letters consistent and trying to just keep the lettering as neat and legible as possible. So far, all that stuff could also be done without this, but I feel like this just makes things a little bit easier and makes the process go a little bit more smoothly. I think the most rewarding and satisfying thing about doing this whole process traditionally is getting to have like actual comic pages on my drawing board at any given moment. It just feels more tactile and like, I don't know, satisfying as an artist to make drawings on paper again. And even as far as just like going through the pages and trying to like tweak the story from the original version and just keep making it better and better. It's nice to be able to like hang these up on the wall and look at them as a whole, or just kind of like flip through them. It's different than flipping through digital files. There's nothing wrong with making comics or illustrations digitally. Like I said, I've done that for a really long time. And I think there's very good reason sometimes to do things digitally. And it can be creatively rewarding and satisfying in its own way. But when you haven't done it for so long, getting back into the sort of traditional way of making things just feels really good. I'm taking my time with this project just because it's sort of like a personal project. I'm working on it in my spare time. So it's been moving pretty slowly. But after this and in the future, I really want to experiment with more like efficiency. So I think the next thing I want to do is experiment with different sizes, maybe putting 2 pages on one of these Eon art boards, for instance, and to see if that's a more efficient way and perhaps a way that kind of like dictates my style in a different way or sparks different creative decisions. Maybe even working larger. Maybe one of these art boards could be like 1 panel or 2 panels, sort of in the vein of the way old comic strip artists from way back in the day used to work. They used to work really, really big. I'd like to kind of like try all different extremes and see what approach works for me when it comes to working digitally. Anyway, I just wanted to give you this little update as to where I'm at with this particular comic project. Like I said, we're always talking about other comic artists and other comic artists' work, which I very much enjoy doing, but I thought I'd take a little bit of a break and apply some of that inspection and analysis onto my own work. So like I said, if you want to see more of the process and follow along with how this comic is coming along, you could ask me questions specifically I try to give as regular updates onto this and as much behind the scenes as to how this is coming along on my Patreon. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to follow along. The Patreon definitely helps facilitate more comic projects like this, which is very, very helpful, and I really appreciate it. It also helps grow this channel and ensure that I'm able to keep making videos on this channel. So any little bit of support on the Patreon is very much appreciated and very much goes a long way. That's it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. Again, there'll be links in the description where you can get some awesome Bristol board paper if you want to make some awesome comic art yourself. Get your hands on some really great quality ink too. My Patreon link will be in the description as well. And I think that's all I got for this one. Stay tuned for more videos. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.